Hi everyone, it's Ray here from City Fan TV, and well, finally, after a 4-year Premier League investigation, Manchester City have been charged with over 100 breaches of financial regulations. Now, there's been a lot of speculation on social media, with many opposition fans and journalists condemning City, saying we're guilty as charged already, and they're already distributing punishments, such as stripping us of league titles, points deduction, relegation, and fines. That's a lot of, I think, a lot of noise there from other fans, and I think it's time we cut through to the chase and get a good idea of what's really happening, what's really going on. And as you know, on this channel, go to our good friend Colin Savage, who is, I say it every time, finance guru. And, there's not many people who know much more about financial fair play than Colin. So I'll bring you in, Colin. How are you doing to start with?
I'm fine. Yeah. As you said, I know my onions, and we all like onions, don't we? And by the way, I found my phone, by the way. It was in my car.
Fantastic. And we've also got, obviously, Bernard, who's been doing a lot of videos with us recently. And, we're going to get some viewpoints from the expert, I will call Colin, finance person, me. I'll chip in as well.
And the dummy here. The dummy.
We need a stooge. We need a stooge.
FFP for dummies.
Want to ask the daft questions.
Yeah. So Bernard will ask the question. We're going to ask questions as genuine fans, and that's kind of, obviously we're Man City fans. This is what we want. We want to know what's going on. So
you're the voice of the common man, Bernard. And
well, that's it. I mean, I go to work and I start chatting to these United fans and Liverpool fans, and you get crap, and you just end up throwing obscenities at them rather than talking logically. You know what I mean? I'd love to have a bit more ammunition to talk, but I have got certain knowledge, of course I have. But I just end up, it's just a waste. You know what it's like, guys? It's like talking to a brick wall half the time.
It's very frustrating talking to fans who, I remember the other day calling Jamie Carragher ignorant for his comments. But this is it. People are making comments without any sort of clue of what's going on, and they're coming with.
It's so annoying, isn't it? Because they do this. They have someone like Jamie Carragher has no idea what went on at UEFA, what went on at CAS. He has no idea about financial fair play. They just spout nonsense. The first thing that comes into their head.
The thing is,
that's why you need to listen to us.
Yeah, absolutely. But look, people are going to get their information from their regular sources, whether they're biased or not. Unfortunately, more sources out there, I feel, are biased and are ignorant. And we're going to try and give you as much clarity over what's going on and why it's happening. So I'm going to start, actually, Colin. The first question I've got is, why now? What's the motivation? Is there something else going on in the background? So
there's a lot. Yeah, I mean, the Premier League have been investigating this for 4 years. And my view has been, if they've been looking at stuff for 4 years and not come up with anything, there's not much to find, probably. They've perhaps been, going through bus tickets and checking we've charged VAT on fuel properly, that sort of stuff. But there's a lot of speculation. Obviously, this came out on Monday, February the 6th. And on February the 5th, I'm not sure what people realise, the government was due to release its white paper on independent football regulation. Now, this is the outcome of the Tracy Crouch-led review, the fan-led review. And one of the recommendations from that was that football isn't capable of governing itself and needs to have an independent regulator. Now, I think we're all suspicious of government getting involved in sport entertainment, but there's been a lot of call for this, and it's come from two different sides. People who want certain owners banned, and I'm sure ours would fall into that category in some, and others just want better oversight. So that paper was due to be released, and Liz Truss, when she was Prime Minister, dropped that. Rishi Sunak, as Prime Minister, has resurrected it. So I think there was some concern. We know that of the big six clubs, City, ironically, were the only one who wanted an independent regulator. And you can probably imagine why, because obviously we feel that certain clubs rule the roost and are calling all the shots. So you could see why we would want an independent regulator to make the thing more fair, more transparent, potentially, and take some of the power away from some of the clubs. Of course, the other five don't want it. and for probably the same reasons, opposite way around that we've just discussed. Now,
so the other 5 are obviously United, Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea, and Tottenham.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know what the position of the other 14 clubs in the Premier League is, but it's the big 5 who don't want it. So you wonder what they've got to fear. Now, I say that was due to be released, I think, yesterday, but it was delayed. And then on the 6th of February, the Premier League released the charges. Now, one of the things that City noticed and a few other fans noticed is that the list of charges, I don't know if you can see it, but my notes here, you probably can't see because I've got a background on, but it's a list of charges saying, for season 2009-10, Premier League rules B13, C71, C72, etc. And it goes down fills the whole page of A4. I think there's 110, 115 different rule breaches. No, there's one for each year. So there's one for each year.
It does sound, the number sounds very, very serious, but are there some that it's the same charge for many, many seasons?
So the first thing that the City noticed was because the Premier League handbook changes every year. They'll introduce new rules, they'll change existing rules. So what was rule E11 in 2010-11 might be rule W42 in 2022-23. So one of the things I did, and one of the things a few other people did, and obviously one of the things City did, was to go through the rule books for those. You've got to assume that the rule breach we've been charged with is the rule that was in place in that particular year. So if we've been charged with a rule breach in 2010-11, if it's E13, whatever number it is, the E13 in 2010-11's copy of the handbook related to something specific, but some of them are very bizarre. So was the one about cutting the grass to a certain level? When you actually went and checked these, there was another one that said all clubs should enter the FA Cup. So we'd apparently been breached with. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to get off with the rule breaches, but it just means that the Premier League, for whatever reason, seems to have rushed this out without checking it properly, whether they got the work experience kid to do it. So there's a lot of rules specified in their original statement, which just don't seem to apply to any logical scenario. So there's a lot of suspicion that the Premier League has done this in anticipation of the white paper, which was due to be released the day before, to show that, the Premier League's strong, we can regulate ourselves, we don't need any outside help. So that's one of the reasons being put around that the Premier League might have done it now.
And what they are saying, Colin, there is that the other 19 Premier League clubs have not done one rule break in the last 10, 12 years between them. Just us.
Now, one thing I was going to mention, but think back to the incident in 2013, Liverpool staff illegally accessing one of our scouting or performance databases. Now, there's a rule that we've been charged with, I think vitamin B13, that all clubs should act in utmost good faith towards other clubs. Now, if what Liverpool did isn't a breach of that, then what the hell is?
And didn't the Premier League say it's in the past? We punished them a little bit.
In the past.
Too long ago. Yeah. It's too long ago.
Too long ago, because it came out, a couple of years ago? But they've charged us going back to 2009-10. Now, whether you can draw an equivalence from that, but what Liverpool did was potentially a criminal offence. There is an act which governs misuse of data. And they seem to have failed by accessing the database in the first place. Whether they did anything with the data or not, they've kind of broken level 1 of that law. So, it's never been applied. We don't know. It might have been done behind closed doors, but it's never been applied publicly that we know of. Yet all of a sudden we've got 110 charges.
Yeah. Colin, do you want to go through some of the main charges? I'm not going to ask you to go through all 110.
No. There were multiple similar charges that they're grouped under 5 headings. So heading number 1 is basically the key one, which is about, it says in respect of each of seasons 2009-10 to 2017-18, so that's 9 seasons, they require a member club to submit accurate financial information in utmost good faith that gives a true and fair view of the club's financial position. So that's about half the charges relate to that heading. So it's about submission of financial information. The second heading is that it's about manager and player remuneration in various seasons. So that's 2009-10 to 2015-16 in total. The third heading is over 5 years. It's to do with financial fair play, because people don't realize, I've just listened to a podcast by the 2 American guys, Adam Booker and Andrew Denmer. And I think what Andrew didn't realize was UEFA kind of outsourced the FFP licensing to the National Association. So the Premier League is the licensor for Premier League clubs as far as FFP is concerned, is my understanding. So basically, if we've deceived the Premier League over our FFP submission, that's automatically, if we've deceived the Premier League over our accounts, that means we've potentially automatically misstated our FFP submission. So
we'll be getting another charge than the UEFA, will we, as well then?
I don't know. But I think that's why it's from, whether they can go back and charge us again. This is probably a different thing. So it's possible, I guess.
It's unusual, Colin, actually, that one of the charges relate to deceiving UEFA. Is this what you're talking about?
Well, I think this is what they're talking about. Yeah, I say, must make the point. The charges aren't they're specific in terms of the rules breached, but we don't know what exactly the breach is. So we can make a bit of a guess at some of these. But basically, if we've submitted incorrect accounts, and that includes incorrect managerial and player remuneration, and that therefore impacts our financial fair play submission. The fourth one is, again, in the same vein, obviously there's the Premier League's own cost control rules. What do they call them these days? The profitability and sustainability. So again, it's an automatic one. And the last heading is about failure to cooperate, which again happened at UEFA, and we did actually get fined for by CAS. But I suspect the club would take a hit on that. So it's about, the core of it seems to be about submitting incorrect and misleading accounts.
Is that the most serious charge? Sorry, is that the most serious charge, do you think?
That's the core of the charges. Because the FFP, the Premier League's own sustainability rules, they all flow from that.
Yeah, okay.
So basically, if we can prove we've not submitted misleading accounts, then all that lot probably falls.
Yeah. Okay.
And it only leaves the non-cooperation charge.
Yeah. I want to remind people, obviously, we've been here before, kind of, with UEFA, where initially we were charged, we were punished, actually. We were convicted by UEFA. We were banned from the Champions League for 2 seasons with a £30 million or €30 million fine. And at CAS, that was basically the ban was overturned, and the fine was reduced to 10 million because we just refused to cooperate, because we said it was, I think, a flawed process, bias.
Just to come in on that, I think we made the point when we talked about this. The club just didn't capriciously refuse to cooperate. They took legal advice. And some of the legal advice said you don't have to cooperate with this. Now, obviously, CAS found that we should have cooperated. Yeah. And the rules of the Premier League rules say all clubs have to cooperate. City say they've cooperated, they've given Premier League all the information they need. It may be a similar tactic to the one at CAS, whereby they introduced information at the CAS hearing that probably wasn't produced at UEFA.
I think that's it. City did cooperate with CAS. They gave them all the information that they requested, and you're probably right there, Colin, that they were given the advice with UEFA that here's the information you need to submit, and they submitted what they had. Maybe UEFA were expecting a bit more that we didn't have, but yeah, the thing is with the CAS thing. So obviously, City were exonerated pretty much, but mud does stick. So people still go back and say, obviously fans and some, petty journalists say that, it was the time bar was one thing that came up, that some of the charges had lapsed because UEFA had whatever it was, a 6-year time bar, 5-year time bar. And people say, actually, you were guilty, but because the time bar you got off. Well, if I'm right, Colin. But the thing is, because of the time bar,
one of the core of that case was the Etihad deal.
Yeah,
and it was still that Etihad deal covered the period which wasn't time barred.
Yeah, but the thing what I'm going to say about the time bar for the CAS thing, the UEFA CAS one was, CAS, if I remember correctly, wouldn't look at those. What's the point of looking at something, coming up with a decision and say, actually, it's time barred? So their starting point is, that's time barred. We're not going to look at that. So how can anybody turn around and say, oh, you were guilty, but because you're time barred, you got off? We might have been guilty, but the time bar.
Yeah, and I've heard that City actually would have liked to introduce evidence to support their case in the time bar thing, but they did ask for it. It was that the City kind of lines of defence were, firstly, the emails were inadmissible, which was wrong, and then it was about, there was an argument over time barring and the dates, which CAS took a different view to both City and slightly different view to both City and UEFA. So but there is no apparent time bar within the Premier League rules.
That was my next question.
But I mean, English law assumes a limitation period of 6 years, but that's mainly for contractual stuff.
Yeah.
Whether as a private company, which the Premier League is, a private club, has its rules. Whether the limitation applies to that, I'm not sure. I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah, I mean, and I just remember from the dark and distant past, even if it did, let's say English law, the standard period is 6 years. Even if it did, they would still be able to hear some of this case. Yeah.
Let's assume we argue a 6-year statute of limitations in English law. The Premier League can't go back to 2015-16. There's still enough charges in the later years.
Yeah.
Not many, but enough. Because most of these date back to 2015, 16, 17, 18. If you go back 6 years, I think we're looking at the end of the 2016-17 financial year would fall into the period which could be examined. So
there's a lot on. I've been on Twitter a lot today, and there's a lot of these people, obviously a lot with blue ticks, and a lot of United fans, Liverpool fans who are supposedly intelligent people, lawyers, everything, and they're coming up. There's a lot of emails appearing, and obviously these are the things that are in the public domain at the moment. I assume this is all the stuff from the UEFA fallout.
Yeah,
is it all the
stuff from that was brought up at CAS, which was as we said before,
people are quoting it as though this is evidence that City are guilty, as though this is what we're guilty of, and yet this is all the stuff that's already been gone through.
As I said at the time when those emails were published, you're only seeing part of the conversation. You're saying, someone's saying, "Do we do this?" But you never saw the response. The response might be, "No, we can't do that." And and it's the point that was made as CAS. There's no point getting over it. Was that just because someone says they're going to do something doesn't mean they did it.
Yeah. So the things we're being charged for at the moment, there'll be nothing out there that people will be able to quote, will they? Because it'll just be under the Premier League will have it.
I mean, one thing I will say, I mean, we're almost 20 minutes in here. Got to say this up front. I talked to Colin before the CAS verdict was released. We discussed this. I remember talking a few days before that, and we probably chatted on and off long before that. And you'd gone through a lot of reasons why you thought City would. I wouldn't say get off, because that sounds like we fluked it, or it was a technicality. Why City would be exonerated. You talked about, if I remember, was it HH? When
emails
where basically people misunderstood how was it Sheikh Mansour or somebody else would be called. I think they were called HH or something, His Highness or something.
HH, yeah, and there's many people called His Highness.
So, but I will say that up front, Colin got that call right, and I remember I said this on Twitter, and people laugh at us, but I made a video the day before because I was so confident that we wouldn't that the ban would be overturned. I actually thought everything would be overturned, but you can't get it 100% right. That's how confident I think certainly you were, and I felt that confidence. I felt confident enough to do that and to put it out there. So I think what I want to say is you're coming from a very good, solid past history.
Well, the difference was in that case was we saw what Der Spiegel published, and that was the basis of UEFA's case against us. I'd done my own research. I knew FFP, and I discovered how the Etihad deal was actually funded. I'd known for a while how that deal was funded. So to me, it was a simple leap to say, well, no, actually, Sheikh Mansour didn't pay that money. I know where it came from. It came from Central Abu Dhabi funds, and that was testified. So it was a fairly easy, a bit nervous at times, but it was a reasonably easy leap to make because we had all the evidence. We don't know in this case. It's just rule, E3, E4, E11.
Yeah, I'm going to go through. I've got a few more. Obviously, I've got a ton of questions. I've been passed about 50 questions by people asking once the new Colin was coming on, but we can't go through them all. Otherwise, some of us might even grow hair. We'll be here that long. But obviously, we said there's not time bar. Obviously, with the UEFA one, we had the appeal, which went top level was cast. Now, you've mentioned there's no cast this time. What is the appeal? Do you know what the appeal structure is here?
Well, I think we appeal internally.
Yeah.
I mean, you can argue how independent that is, but basically the Premier League rules in terms of disciplinary are based on something called the Arbitration Act 1996. So basically that covers procedures for these types of events, and the Arbitration Act 1996 says you can go to court if you're not happy with the result of an appeal. You can go to court, but only under very narrow circumstances. So, for example, you've got to feel that they've misinterpreted the law or there's been a serious abuse of process. And we did claim that for UEFA, but it got turned down. But we went quite early with that. So there are limited situations in which you can take it to more general law, and we'll have to see what comes out of it. But I'm sure, if City aren't happy, they'll find a way to take it to court. Yeah,
I think it's really important to get an idea what the timeline is going to be, because obviously people are coming out with some crazy stuff about Pep's going to leave and the players are going to leave, and Haaland will leave in the summer and other players won't come. I mean, we'll go into some of that later, but what do you think is the timeline on this case and possible appeal?
I've no idea. People say, there's 110, 115 charges, but I say at least half of those relate to one core event, which is the misstatement of finances. And if, for example, we'll talk about the image rights situation. If the arbitration panel were to find that we did willfully misstate our accounts because of image rights, then that would presumably apply to all the charges relating to accounts. I don't know. So I can't see it being. I know there's some talk about being complete by the end of the season. I really can't see that.
I mean, I've heard up to 4 years as the maximum.
If we took it to court, I don't know. I mean, the CAS hearing was over 3 days. or 2.5 days or something like that. I don't know whether there's a time limit for this, whether it will just go on. It's up to the panel to decide how long it goes on, what the process is, but could go on for months and months and months, just hearing the initial evidence, and then there might be an appeal, and we don't know. I'd suspect that maybe by Christmas, maybe at the end of next season, we should.
My feeling was, I said this on Monday, that it's not going to finish this year. It's certainly the end game isn't going to happen this season, and I expect it to take probably the best part of 18 months. It might finish next season,
about right.
And then you've got the appeal. So you will have an appeal. That appeal might take less time than the first one, because for argument's sake, there might be certain areas where City are found innocent, and the Premier League don't want to contest them. So some of the charges might be dropped.
I mean, we might be found. The charge. I suspect. A bit like Kaz, the non-cooperation ones may stick.
Yeah.
But
I think there'll be some
charges may get. I say it all stands and falls on, did we misstate our accounts? And if that falls, then everything else falls.
Yeah, but I did see a barrister, King's Counsel, actually make a comment about this. Not that he's a football fan or anything, but he basically said, because there's a comment about Panic, Lord Panic, who's going to be our barrister. People saying he's on 80 grand a day, which is not true. Stephen Borson would say he's not on 80 grand a day. It's ridiculous that. He'll be on a fair whack, but certainly not as much as that.
Yeah, he won't be worrying about his heating bill, that's for sure.
I'll tell you that. But this other KC, I did get a screenshot. I can't find it now. But he said, well done to everybody who's going to be involved. I don't know who I'm going to be working with or against over the next 4 years. So he's already saying 4 years, and you think he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, I don't know. You just don't know. I suspect. I'd take your view that probably we're looking at, for the initial hearing, maybe about 18 months.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to go through.
What is now we've had this? What is the next step? What does City have to do, or what does the Premier League? What's the next step?
It's preparation of evidence. So, because apparently we found out as the statement went out. So they rang us. Apparently, City said they rang them to tell them they were being charged. And
is that after the time
evidence that media outlets were briefed before that? So it's not like they presented us this like a month ago and said, right, we're going to announce the charges on the 6th of February. So we have to do our preparation for this. Obviously, we have to get our legal people involved, our financial people involved. That alone may take 3-4 months.
Well, we've also got to agree the panel. So there can be 3 people in the panel. I think the chairman's been decided. The slight Arsenal fan. He just happens to be a board member, I think, of Arsenal. But that I'm sure won't affect anything the same way. The same way that referee from the Altrincham fan who referees games isn't.
I am told. Yeah. I am told that he is an Altrincham fan by someone who knows. But the rest of his family are United fans.
Yeah. I mean, it might be the one good apple in the family. You never know. I know we don't know what's going to happen in the end, but there's all sorts of wild accusations and suggestions as to what the punishments can be if City are found guilty. Now, obviously, when I talked about appeals, if City are found innocent of everything, the Premier League can appeal if they want, and obviously vice versa. Do you have any idea what the penalties could be to City?
Yeah. The Premier League rules are specific about these, but they don't put in a tariff, of course. But there are 3 main penalties. One's a fine. One is another one is points deductions, and the most extreme is expulsion from the Premier League. And it's not clear.
Can they take our titles, Colin? Can they take our? They can take our titles, but can't take our memories.
Take our freedom
from the Premier League. They can't take any titles off. There are 1 or 2 other punishments. If it's about a game, they could order that game to be replayed, for example.
I can see, a 40-year-old
Yeah.
They can do other little things, but those are the three. It's a fine, points deductions, or the very extreme case, expulsion from the Premier League.
I'm going to go back to this hearing. Is it, and we don't know yet, I'm sure that's going to be your answer, but is it likely to be a public hearing or a private one like UEFA and CAS were? Will we get any information?
I don't know.
Okay. I'm going to go down to some questions here before we go to some more technical issues. If City are innocent of everything, what happens next? Do we just carry on as normal, or will City stay in the Premier League? Reputation damage?
We'll probably get, I suspect, like CAS, we'll probably get fined for non-cooperation.
Yeah.
It wouldn't bring that charge without some reason. We may argue it, I don't know. So, and there'll be those who say, oh, well, you got fined, you got punished for non-cooperation. The mud will always stick once people will say, we got off on a technicality.
Yeah.
It's like saying a murderer got off, someone got off on a technicality for a murder because actually they weren't anywhere near the murder scene at the time it was committed. That's a bit more than a technicality, isn't it? So, and I suspect when we talk about why we talked about the timing, but I think one of we know, let's cut to the chase. We know this is being pushed by our rivals, and at best for us is we're found innocent, but the mud still sticks.
Yeah,
we've seen people reproducing those emails from CAS, which were CAS comprehensively. People will still say you got off on a technicality, and you show them the 20 incidents in the CAS verdict of no evidence, and they still don't believe it. But
no, that's been the one. I think the fellow's name is Adam. That's been pushed on Twitter. I've seen that, and it's very hard for people to argue against it unless they have that information from what happened at CAS, like you have. Yeah. Ordinary Joe in the street has no idea. I had to push back on that. I'm going to flick around a little bit with me questions here, but obviously, I think you're right. I don't think they'll take our titles away. Otherwise, you got.
No, it's not in the rules.
You got a lot of messing about where this talk about Sunderland and Aston Villa being awarded the Carabao Cup or EFL Cup, Watford and Stoke getting FA Cups.
That is not going to happen.
And even if
that's not Premier League stuff.
No.
And B, there is no provision in the Premier League handbook for removal of titles.
And even if we did go down that route, and start giving trophies to everybody, Spurs will still have not won anything.
No, come on, we did beat them in the Carabao. So they could get that.
No, when did we beat them in the Carabao Cup? Not Spurs.
Yeah, COVID. During just the first game after COVID.
Not in the final.
Wembley.
In the final?
Yeah, 1-0. Come on, I was there.
You were there. All right. But Bernard, when my jokes work, don't take it away by pushing out my inaccuracies. Okay, so let's get back on some more serious stuff. People, I've touched upon this, but people have talked about Pep's future, and they come out with this comment that Pep made earlier in the year, last season. That if they've lied to me, I'll leave. I'm going to bring also new players. People say players. Why would Jude Bellingham come to City with this hanging over you? And if it's going to take 4 years, well, I think Pep will have gone within 4 years, so I don't think that matters. But how much do you think it will affect new players coming in, Colin? Would they be bothered?
It didn't particularly affect them when we had the UEFA case, did it?
Yeah, no. So I suspect new players will just say, "Well, you got Pep, tick."
No, as long as they get paid.
Yeah, you get pay me lots of money, tick, and you're going to challenge for the top honours, tick. What else?
They might put in a clause in the contract to say if we're disqualified from the Premier League,
relegated or whatever,
But they're going to come to City to win.
Yeah. Look, we all know Jude Bellingham's coming in the summer. So
nothing to Liverpool.
Well, you've been looking at too many fan channels. He ain't going Liverpool. Look, let's be honest. He'll be playing the Johnson Paints if he goes to Liverpool. Because
what's the worst that could happen? We could go back to some of us that could actually get to York away properly. And it's great. If we get chucked out the Premier League and we have to start in the North West Counties League. You know, Prestwich Hayes and Radcliffe Borough and Hyde United.
Local,
no chance of getting a ticket. The two of my points are not a cat and else chance.
Okay, Bernard, I'll ask you about from the fans aspect. You know, obviously you I won't say you're a voice for the fans, but you got over 10,000 followers on Twitter. You got the YouTube channel, and obviously you speak to a lot of fans. You go on a lot of podcasts and streams and videos with other fans. So how do you see the fans reacting at the moment? Is it going to galvanise the fans when we go to play Villa? Well, when Villa come to us on Sunday, are the fans going to be galvanised?
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, guys like us who've been there in Division 2 and etc. I mean, of course, it'll galvanise us. Obviously, there'll be a question mark over certain newcomers to the club, but I think a lot of them have realised you have to teach a couple history and stuff like this. But I think a lot of them are, you know, they sort of come over to our side. They know what it means being a fan, and it makes no difference to the fans. I mean, my only worry, obviously, is the project and obviously the Sheikh and the various things. And, you know, he's not going to walk away because he's got too much involved in this, hasn't he, guys? So he's not going to walk out unless it's something absolutely, you know, he gets thrown out, which is obviously the worst case scenario, of course, if it all goes to pot. But the fans will be up for it. There'll be a lot of going down with $1 billion in the bank, of course, on Sunday.
That's the biggest one, isn't it?
And we've been getting, I mean, the opposing fans on Twitter, they're very vitriol. There's a lot of vitriol, but when you go to the grounds, you don't get that as much. You know what I mean? The actual fans in the grounds, it's just these people who live 1,000 miles away are coming out with all the vitriol. It's not the actual fans themselves. So the City fans will love it. The City fans won't be bothered if we end up getting relegated or down to the Championship. You know, we've already, all the gallows humour has been coming out, of course, over the last. I've done a bit of my own over the last 2 or 3 days, and that's what we are. That's what we used to. That's what makes a City fan. That's what makes us, we think, a little bit stand out from everyone else, and we'll take it on the chin. It's annoying, of course it is, and you get a bit worn out with it. But I think most fans are positive, and they're just all right. If they're giving abuse to some people, blue tick people on Twitter, I try not to because I'm a grown up. But yeah, I mean, you know, they got to be. It's just what it is. It is what it is, and we just want it sorted. And if it takes 4 years, it takes 4 years. But it's a long time. But the fans won't. The proper fans won't desert the club. That's for sure. And they'll be up for it on Sunday at least to start with. That's for sure.
I've got another question for Colin here. Obviously, there's a lot of talk recently about the Premier League being the European Super League with what was spent in the January window with Chelsea on their own, spending more than basically all the other leagues combined. It's crazy. I mean, I tell you what, it's a good job we didn't do that on Newcastle. Otherwise, all sorts, all hell will break loose. But do you think this will potentially push for a European Super League? For argument's sake, if City end up getting relegated, could they push for a European Super League and say, stuff this, Sheikh Mansour and is worth whatever, £100 billion. He can finance this himself. He could destroy football if he wanted to.
Well, potentially that could happen. I mean, I don't think we'll get chucked out the Premier League, to be honest. But I said on Twitter before, there's a conspiracy theorist in me, just, you know, fighting to get out. And if you think of that from the point of view of the other 5, 6, well, we know it's United, Arsenal, Liverpool, probably largely behind it, Spurs as well. For them, it's kind of a win-win situation, if you like. Could be a win-win situation. The Premier League, people found guilty and we suffer a penalty. Great for them. He may keep shackle us for a couple of seasons. It may not. I don't know. If we take on the Premier League in full, you know, we go in both feet. We do a Vinnie Jones or whatever. Potentially, that's the repercussions could be so great for the Premier League that it gives those clubs the window of opportunity they wouldn't have had since they first tried to do it to create the Super League. So you could see why potentially, you know, either extreme, it's a win-win for the other clubs.
Yeah. Well, we've also got to say why the clubs are doing this. One, City winning trophies. that they could potentially be winning. You know, if City were not in the picture, or we were, you know, back in the days where we were languishing at the bottom of the table or below, then you know, the big trophies would be shared out between Man United, Arsenal, Liverpool, and maybe Tottenham would pick up the odd one here and there. So there's that aspect, and obviously there's a big money aspect because there are only 4 Champions League places. Right now, for the last 4 or 5 seasons, City and Liverpool have been in the top 4. Chelsea have generally been there. They're having obviously a bad season, but suddenly now you got a new upstart. You got Newcastle in there as well. So suddenly, I think clubs are worried that City will be there. Liverpool will probably bounce back. Newcastle are doing very well at the moment, and they will have the funds to push on and buy more players. And United are coming back, and then where does that leave everybody else? So everybody else potentially is fighting for one spot or 1 or 2 spots. You got maybe 5 clubs fighting for 2 spots. Doesn't work.
I think Newcastle will fall away this season, but they'll be back. And you say it's us at the moment. Us and Arsenal look the most likely. United probably, unfortunately, and so that, you know, that leaves one space. Chelsea, Liverpool, Spurs. They've got one space between them, and not being in the Champions League will hurt them financially, because it's, you know, for Liverpool, I think the season they won it was something like 120 million. For Chelsea, it's similar. We're even us as losing finalists, I think we made nearly £100 million, and that will hurt them. So yeah, I can understand. You know, I can understand why they're nervous.
Yeah, and also having a club like City, and they use this against us again. They talk about us inflating the market. Well, that's a load of rubbish. We all know that. Yeah. But also because we are so good on the pitch, they have to take more risks. They have to spend potentially more money than they would like. And if you can look at Liverpool, for an example, you know, they've just bought, was it 4 or 5 forwards in the last 2 seasons? They've got Jota, they've got Diaz, they've got Nunez, they've got this, they've got James Bond, Gakpo. No, 0 assists, 0 goals in 7 games, 007, so 007. Lame joke out there on social media. But they're having to buy more players, really, and they've only sold one main player is Mane from the front line. So they're having to probably push the boat out a lot further than they would like to, and their owners would like to. Obviously, we know their owners would love to have competition like they've got in the States, where it's a franchise based, no relegation.
Yeah. We've always said this, haven't we? The oddity is that the ultimate capitalist country, the USA, has a very socialist sports system, and the supposedly socialist, more socialist Europe has a quite a ruthless cutthroat capitalist system, where the one with the most money generally wins the prizes.
Yeah, I'm leaving this to. I've left this towards the end, but because it can be a dry topic. But I'm going to ask you about, if City have been falsifying their financial statements, how does that get past the auditors? Have we been pulling the wool over their eyes? Have the auditors been in collusion with us, or are the auditors not very good? And people have had a go at BDO Stoy Hayward. Well, hang on, if I'm right, there probably was the 5th biggest accountancy firm in the world. Yeah, they're not small fry. They're not small potatoes.
Someone said, but they're not the big 4. But you know, when you look at all the big 4 have been fined for lapses. Now, I know, you know, Ray, that auditing's a very, let's call it an inexact science. For one reason, you're often reliant on what directors, senior managers tell you, and you have to place faith in those or not in those assertions. The second is you can't go through every single transaction that a company goes through these days. Could you spend? You need to have 1,000 people spending the whole year there. So you can only take a sample of transactions, and what you tend to do is you tend to take the most significant ones. So you look at revenue, you look at the big revenue sources. You know, you're not going to look at something that produces, you know, £1,000 a year revenue, something like that. You're going to look at the things, have they correctly recorded commercial income? And someone asked me, do they have to dig into the Etihad money? No, they only have to record that Etihad, we recorded Etihad paid us 50 million, and Etihad indeed paid us 50 million. So it's a very, you can only do a sample. And if companies choose to mislead their auditors, they can do. Now, I'm not suggesting for one moment that City have misled their auditors, but there are cases. So the case going on in Germany at the moment, Wirecard, the chief exec, Marcus Brown, my old colleague, we're on a course together. I don't know him particularly well, though. And they claim to have funds that were never properly checked by the auditors, very negligent. The auditors never checked that these assets actually existed. And one of the things you did as an audit was, if a company had a fleet of vehicles, you check that all those vehicles existed, or property, or whatever. So but you wouldn't go around checking the staplers, for example. So auditors can be negligent, auditors can be misled, or they just don't look in the right place. The case I was involved in, an insider dealing scandal. One of the first big insider dealing scandals. We were suspicious there was something going on, but it was only a matter of luck that we found it. Really.
Do you think some people have said, I know we don't want to go too long, but do you think there's a whistleblower involved in this?
I've seen a rumor there's some whistleblower, but I think the key, that there may be small things, but we've not really talked about, taking our guess at what the charges relate to. Yeah. And we mentioned this before, which is player image rights. Now, this is an interesting one. So in 2013, City, basically, clubs have players contract with clubs for the use of their image rights. So, if you're doing advertising and whatever. So City have commercial deals, and they'll get money in for that commercial deals, and they'll pay the players a portion of their remuneration based on image rights. Now, it's a complicated subject. I'm not going to go into detail, but basically, it's personal to the player. It's not so. I'm paid PAYE. I get my money. It's taxed and insured. If I had a side gig, and I use the example, someone said it was a bit complicated. Imagine you're a commercial photographer. You work for a commercial photography company, and they do a few weddings as well. And they decide the wedding business isn't worth it. So you say to them, look, I'll do the wedding business. You do all the invoicing, but pay me the money, and I'll deal with it for tax reasons. It's my personal income. So and you do that. So you get paid. You may get paid £40,000 a year through PAYE, and you may make, £5,000 a year doing the weddings. And your employer bills the clients for the weddings, then they pass that straight on to you. So the players generally have what they call personal service companies, their own limited companies, to manage their image rights. It's almost like a separate contract. Now, what we did was, we had a company called Manchester City Image Rights, because it's paid separately. So it's paid probably gross to the players. And as I say, HMRC, unless you can make a very specific case, someone very high profile, someone like Messi, Ronaldo, even Wayne Rooney had a load of side deals, which probably brought him in far more money than he earned from United for playing. Generally, HMRC limited it to about 10% of a player's total income. So, if you're on 100k a week, you'll probably be paid 90k via PAYE and 10k to your own personal company, which you have to then account for and pay tax on. So City had a company called Manchester City Football Club Image Rights, and they changed the name to Fordham Sports Image Rights, and then sent it off to a new company. So Fordham were incorporated at the end of 2012, and they seem to handle all the payments for image rights to players. So they had no money going in, though, but the only money going in seems to have come from Sheikh Mansour. So he would basically compensate them. Now, the argument is probably, we don't know for sure, the argument is probably that City should have included that in their remuneration to players. So I think this is what they mean when they say we've understated our expenses, therefore increased our profits. Maybe about 15 million a year was being paid. I think I worked it out, about 17 million a year being paid to the players through Fordham, rather than being paid through Manchester City. Now, so I suspect UEFA are arguing that should have gone through our accounts. I suspect City took very good legal and tax and accounting advice on that. It's a separate contract, so it's a very grey area. But even if that was found to be the case, even if the panel tribunal, the appeal says no, you should have paid that, therefore you misstated your account, the auditors must have known about Fordham. This is the point I'm trying to make, because we changed the name of the company. It's there in Companies House. It's changed from Manchester City Football Club Image Rights to Fordham Sports Image Rights Limited. So the auditors would have known about this. So again, if they felt there was a material issue, they would have qualified the accounts or made some notes or walked away. Now, BDO, you mentioned Story Hayward. That was my old firm, which merged with BDO back in the day. They've been an auditor since before Tactician Watcher took over. So, they've not walked away in all those, what we're talking about, 15, 16, 17 years. They've not qualified our accounts. And I can't imagine we'd have hidden that from them. We couldn't have hidden that from. If you were semi-competent as an auditor and you looked at that and say, what's this Fordham Sports Image Rights? What are they doing? Where's the money coming from? Then, you would have known about it. So I don't think we couldn't have possibly, the auditors would have had to be extraordinarily incompetent not to see that. And there's no possible way we could have hidden that from them, because it's there. Companies House, you can see it.
Yeah, it is still possible, Colin, for you to take advice from advisors, tax advisors, or consultants, or whoever, and for them to make a mistake which causes you to do something wrong. That doesn't mean you were deliberately deceptive or falsifying your account.
No, that's right. Yeah. If you mistaken, there's so many cases that HMRC, big cases with IT contractors, IR35. I won't go into the details of that. The loan charge, things like that, where people did things that were apparently legitimate at the time, took advice were legitimate, and then HMRC turned around and said it's not legitimate, or they argue the case. So this is why I'm reasonably confident, because we wouldn't have just we clearly haven't hidden it, unless there's something I don't. Of course, as we said with CAS, virtually all the information was in the public domain. We don't know on this case, so unless there's some other major issue, and let's talk about Roberto Mancini's contract, but that was only at worst that was less than 1.5 million. It's not material, the concept of materiality. We're going to pass or fail financial fair play for 1.5 million. So I think the Mancini thing, manager remuneration, is a bit of a red herring, and I suspect they've thrown a lot at us, hoping some of it will stick. But image rights are not part of it. It could well be that the club have no responsibility. The clubs do pay image rights, vast majority do, but it could be that there's no reason why they need to. As long as the players get their money, and as long as they account for it properly, which is not our problem, then we've probably done nothing wrong. So we'll have to wait and see, though. We don't know.
There's a couple of things I'm going to mention, and we won't go into them too much, but they are accounting terms. So you got the related parties. So people talk about related parties.
That mentions it. Yeah, it's mentioned in the.
And the other one that people sometimes come up with is sponsorship. And I just, actually, whilst we were chatting, I got a message from a friend of mine, Liverpool fan, asking if the sponsorships that we get are legitimate. Do I believe that? And I said, honestly, I think most of them are. I don't think the crypto ones, the crypto companies that just appeared from nowhere and disappeared.
Yeah, you wonder why the hell we got involved in that. That's not going to. We're not going to get expelled from the Premier League.
No. But we weren't the only ones stung. We weren't the only ones stung.
The interesting thing, we talked about time barring at UEFA before. One of the things that got time barred was the Etisalat arrangement, and there was emails suggesting that was paid through Abu Dhabi United Group initially. But that was prior to financial fair play.
Yeah.
So again, if that's because they've gone back to 2009-10, so that's before financial fair play came in, which was 2011-12. So I suspect they're probably trying to treat that as owner investment. We've misstated the accounts because we treated it as revenue when it should have been a balance sheet item.
Yeah. Well, we just heard this week, I think, that Leicester's chairman has written off £194 million that he gave to Leicester City, and it's converted that into shares. Hey, it's easy for some, isn't it? They can do that. But what I was talking about, the sponsorships, they have to be at a fair market value. They have to be at fair value.
Yes.
UEFA check them. They've got an independent third-party advisor, consultant, checking that the sponsorships are at a fair value. The auditors, if I'm correct, they'll make sure that they'll check them as well. So they've been audited tons of times. So we've discussed it many times as well. I think we firmly believe that they are a reasonable market value. And people say, well, how can, for argument's sake, we go back to that original Etihad deal where people said, it's 400 million quid over 10 years. That's way above market value. When you split it out, it wasn't, because 100 million went to the academy.
Yeah, CAS, both UEFA and Court for Arbitration and Sport accepted that it was fair market value.
Yeah, it was. And another thing, I'll just throw it out there because fans don't believe how City can have the highest turnover in the world when Man United, and this, I was on the radio earlier in the week, and they talk, and this is what they ask questions, saying, well, Man United got a massive fan base and all that. And I pointed out, you might have 100 million fans in Indonesia who don't spend a single penny on the football club. What difference does that make? So I'll let you answer that. Why?
We've said this before, haven't we? That the Premier League is the most watched sporting competition on the planet, and the Champions League is probably not far behind it. And we've been the most successful club over the past 10 years in the Premier League, in the most watched sporting. Our global profile has increased enormously, particularly in the US. And I know, because when I did City Matters, I always used to sit next to Kevin Parker, and I was always asking him how many new branches and where they've been set up, and it always used to stagger me. And I remember him telling me, we've now got more branches, and this was a while ago. We've got more branches. We had more branches in the USA than we used to have in the UK, USA alone, than we had before. The Shinawatra takeover or Abu Dhabi takeover in the UK. So the explosion of interest in City is phenomenal. And even if you're not a City fan, you're watching the Premier League. It's not only City fans fly Etihad. It's about. I remember. I probably used this example before. Qatar Airways used to sponsor the weather, I think, on Sky, and they reckoned by doing that, brand recognition almost doubled. Yeah. So people who've never heard of Qatar Airways saw it, and it would be the same for Etihad. It will, and it's not just the UK you're advertising to. You're advertising, of course, CFG. You can get advertising
across the world,
exposure virtually all over the world now. So
this is why I say when Nissan aren't giving us money. Nissan, obviously, everybody's heard of them, but when you get involved with City, you get the CFG group. You've got club in America, club in Australia, club in Uruguay, Belgium, Spain, obviously Man City, China, India, Japan, and they're going to get a couple more, I think.
We're global these days.
Yeah, so everybody gets their tentacles out everywhere. Very, very.
And the other thing I always point out is, because of our ownership, we can leverage geopolitical and business relationships that other clubs just can't get close to.
Yeah, I mean, you do get friendly sponsors. I mean, if I'm right, when FSG took over Liverpool, they changed the kit manufacturers. Went to, was it Warrior?
Warrior,
Yeah.
Yeah.
They'd not been involved before. Was it Warrior or New Balance that are based in Boston, where FSG are? One of them. So
Warrior, I think, were part of New Balance, weren't they?
Okay,
and prior to Liverpool, their big market was lacrosse.
Yeah, and it was I think it was a little bit higher than people expected, but you got those. They've managed to leverage it, and it worked for them. But I think for me, the bottom line is, big successful companies want to be attached and associated with successful clubs,
which is why United got to where they were. But their commercial income slowed down; it's plateaued because they're not successful anymore. They're not. Obviously, there's still a lot of United fans around, but they're in the Champions League every other year, so you're not getting that huge exposure. Part of that huge global exposure that the Premier League and Champions League have.
Yeah. You guys, are there any more points that you want to mention that we should have mentioned?
Is there any devil's advocate? Is there any correlation? Obviously, these charges from the Premier League, we're talking up to 17, 18, 19, something like that. Any correlation in the fact that City have had a pretty good net spend kings over the last 4 or 5 years? Is that because we've been behaving better and we're going to get stung for everything we've done before?
It might be. We need to be a little bit more careful, but again, it's one of those daft cliches. Jurgen Klopp. I mean, again, Premier League rules talk about behaving with respect to all other clubs and not denigrating them. And how much crap have we had from Klopp? And he's never been charged with the Premier League rules. Our spending is not unlimited. Our money is not unlimited. We have to meet financial fair play. Obviously, that's changed slightly from this season to a different method of calculation. We're well within that. We should be well within that. But we can't spend whatever money we want. We can spend what we earn, like every other club. And part of Klopp's problem is that his owners aren't even spending what they earn, let alone spending more than they earn.
I've got to be honest, when Pep came out about the net spend, I did cringe because, that's one of my bugbears about football speak. Net spend is just pathetic.
We've had this conversation.
Yeah, and it's just invented. It's just an invented metric for clubs that don't spend money, really. And it's just another way to have a pop at City because I said it for many years now. If you can't beat us on the pitch, you can't compete. We were so good, so much better than everybody else when we were in that Centurion season. No one could compete with us on the pitch. They talked about everything off the pitch, empty hard, financial doping, and everything else. That always crops up. One, I think probably my last question, Colin. Obviously, there's a rumour that we've got a lot of money sloshing about in our funds at the moment because obviously, we look at things on the
race City Fan TV or City.
Certainly not me. Well, you might not say that when we get a new car next week, but anyway. So, but City have got so much money sloshing about, really. And when you look at the sales we've made recently with Gabriel Jesus, Sterling, and Zinchenko, there's a hell of a lot of paper profit that's going to help our books. And all obviously the kids we saw from the academy, I think Bazunu, Lieva, to name just two, and a few others have gone. So we're going to do, I think our accounts are going to look very healthy for FFP purposes. People are saying because we might be afraid of getting some sort of potential transfer ban in the future, could we go out and spend hundreds of millions this summer? So I read someone say, City are going to go and spend 300 million. Only Chelsea do that, guys. Only Chelsea. But can you see that City might look to the future and say, well, we may not get relegated, but we might get a fine and a transfer ban?
I don't know. I'm not sure if the Premier League can impose a transfer ban, actually.
What did Chelsea get? What was theirs? Wasn't that the Premier League?
That was FIFA.
Yeah. Chelsea were horrendous. They had, was it 55?
I don't remember seeing a transfer ban in one of the potential punishments to suppose it could be. I don't know.
Yeah. So you know, if it's there, I mean, does that mean we
go? I think the first thing we can do is announce the extension to the north stand. You know, just get that sorted out. Just boil some more, produce some more anger from opposing fans and laughter, and say, right, we're going to start doing it next couple of years or something like that.
So it looks like, you know, this summer, you know, we welcome Jude Bellingham, Kylian Mbappe, the fellow from Napoli, Kvaratskhelia, which I still can't pronounce after saying it hundreds of times, and maybe Letao or whatever his name is, and a couple of others. Maybe this is a season to revamp City, and especially if Bernardo goes for 50 or 60 million, it's not our cash balances, but our profit and loss account is going to look extremely healthy. So, well, I'm just going to suggest we will buy at least 2 or 3 players this summer. Regardless, we need to as a team, and I think we've got the money. And possibly they might be looking into the future and saying, let's get some business done now. And any other points of business, Bernard?
No, I'm fine, mate. I think it was.
Are you spent, Bernard?
Yeah, absolutely, all the time. Not like you. I'm not loaded. Not going to bought a new car like you. No, I'm definitely spent, mate. I'm definitely spent.
I can explain that, but I just get abuse on Twitter. So if I go down that route, so
no, just my thanks to Colin for as usual, concise, and thank him for he instills him with confidence every time I listen to him on this subject.
Yeah, I've got to say, there's a lot of people waiting for this video, so I'm going to bid you guys farewell and thank you, and spend my next couple of hours editing and try and get this out before too late, get it out tonight. So this will certainly, I guarantee, it'll be more enjoyable, more interesting, more captivating than watching Man United play Leeds, which has just started. Guys, thank you so much, Colin.
Yeah,
as ever,
take care.
Cheers, Col.
And see you in 4 years.
And we'll see you around, Blues.